Joseph Shrand is a Harvard psychiatrist and best-selling author of Manage Your Stress. His latest book is Outsmarting Anger, 7 Strategies for Diffusing Our Most Dangerous Emotion. And his topic is who's in charge of your anger, you or your anger? Wow, I get really angry when you ask me that. Please welcome Dr. Shrand.
With this, yeah, oh, look at that. Now I can hear me. So, who on earth would want to hear about anger on a day like this? It's silly. So if you guys want to leave now, I will not be angry. But we're going to talk about it. So, outsmarting anger, 7 strategies for diffusing our most dangerous emotion. I'm going to see whether I can work this. Wow, very cool. So, if you think about it, we are these ancient animals. And we have evolved really over hundreds of millions of years. And this brain has just, it's been remarkable. It's just kept growing and growing and growing. And as we'll see, what I'm trying to show you is that because we now have evolved this new part of our brain, which we'll talk about, we have a remarkable opportunity of what we can do with this ancient feeling of anger. So, this is the brain. It's kind of amazing, you know, if you think about it. We never really threw anything away. As we evolved, we just built one chunk of brain on top of the other. I'm just going to see if I can get this. So this is a laser pointer. You know, you're really not meant to point this at people. Sorry. So here is the brain stem, which goes down into the spinal cord. The brain stem is what's in charge of everything automatic. Of our breathing, our heart rate, everything that's automatic. And then we have built on top of it this chunk of brain called the limbic system, which, as you'll see, is involved in emotions and memories, impulses, feelings. And then here, right behind our forehead, so everybody could just put your hand on your forehead just for a moment like that. Okay, good. So right behind there is your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that says here that's responsible for thinking, solving problems, taking action, but critically anticipating the consequence of that action. So how many times have we done something impulsively and gone, oh, what was I thinking? And you sort of slap your prefrontal cortex trying to get it going. This is exactly it. Now, just as an aside, in adolescence, anybody here have adolescent children? Yeah. Anybody been an adolescent? Anybody still an adolescent? Thank you. Good. We're all in the same place here. So in adolescence, just curiously, this part of the brain, the limbic system, is actually more mature than the thinking part, which explains a lot why adolescents are impulsive, emotional, and sometimes do things that we go, what were they thinking? Because they're not. I mean, they are, but you know, adolescence. So anger, a major part of who we are. I'm curious, has anybody been angry this week? Yeah? I mean, you know, there's a lot of anger going around. And it's really interesting to wonder why is there so much anger? And we may get into that, but, you know, anger's been around with us for millions and millions of years. And as you'll see, it's not the anger that gets us in trouble. It's what we do with it that can really get us in trouble. But anger is a perfectly normal part of being human. Normal. It's part of who we are. It's part of what's made us who we are. It's part of how we survive to be who we are. So, in fact, without anger, we wouldn't have survived. If without anger, we would have probably been lunch for plenty of predators. Because really, we were never the biggest animal, the fastest, or the strongest. We were always prey. Until just a couple of million years ago. So, there's a place for anger in all of us. But we now have, as one of my colleagues says, caveman brains with Star Wars weapons. That's dangerous. That leads to a lot of potential problems. So, it's not the anger that gets you in trouble. It's what you do with it. And aggression is the enactment of anger. So anger, perfectly good feelings. As a matter of fact, a lot of very positive, productive things come from anger. The civil rights movement is because of anger. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, mad against anger, for anger, saying things are wrong. There's nothing wrong with anger. It's really what we do with it. But we have these weapons that make things difficult. So as the small band of hunter-gatherers sat around cleaning their weapons, one made the mistake of looking at his club straight on. Never do this. I don't suppose anybody's ever done this. Have you ever done something impulsively and wound up hurting yourself? Whether it's saying something impulsively out of anger, and you hurt yourself because down the road, the person doesn't forget. How many people have insulted someone, and years later, I've got a hand there. I won't ask you what you did, but I'm so glad you put up your hand. Years later, the person can come back and say, you really hurt me. Because that anger has activated that limbic system in the other person. And remember, the limbic system is responsible for impulses, feelings, and memory. So when you hurt someone today with anger, it may take a long time for them to forget. So what we're going to be talking about in a bit is what we do with all this anger. It's an emotion designed to change the behavior of somebody else. This is really an important definition of anger. Anger is an emotion designed to change the behavior of somebody else. We get angry when we want somebody to do something different. Start doing something, stop doing something. And if you begin to realize that that's why you're angry, you can start thinking, why is the other person angry? Because we've all basically got the same brain. So if somebody else is angry around you, you can begin using this definition and start thinking, what does that person want to see different? What do they want to change? So we get angry when we want someone to start doing something or stop doing something. Well, this fellow, a little bit nervous. I got him, Byron, and something in the spoolage. And I said, whoa, does he look mad? So what's going to happen next in this picture? You know what's going to happen. This guy's going to get stung. That's your prefrontal cortex, already at work. Gary Larson, one of the most brilliant cartoonists, because when he did his cartoons, it wasn't what was happening here that was so funny. It's what's going to happen next. And you anticipate that in your brain with the prefrontal cortex, and that's why Gary Larson cartoons are so brilliant, because he is activating in you that ability to anticipate what's going to happen next. When you tap into that part of your brain, especially around anger, you can really begin to modulate not just your anger, but somebody else's anger. And that's really what we really want to talk about as we get through this talk. So, we get angry when we feel envy. We're at a disadvantage. We want to level the playing field, right? Anger, an emotion designed to change the behavior of somebody else. Why am I getting angry? I think somebody's got more than me. I'm envious of them, and I want them to change. I want to bring them down. First thing, envy. When we feel suspicious, someone's trying to take something from us. Remember, if you are envious of somebody else, the person you are envious of may become suspicious of you. You've got these two brains that are limbic brains, angry brains. Well, another blonde hair, conducting a little more research with that Jane Goodall tramp. A little suspicious, getting a little angry. But when is the last time you got angry at someone you really believed was treating you with respect? Just think about that. You don't get angry when you feel respected. This is really kind of powerful. Respect. You don't get angry when you feel respected. Would anybody like to just, should we do a couple of quick lines of song? Anybody remember the song? Aretha Franklin? Good. Would you sing it, please? Okay, all right. You don't get angry when you feel respected. Think about that. That means if you're doing that, everyone's doing it. How can we begin to modulate somebody else's anger? Through this remarkably simple tool of respect. Right? The brain is not designed to get angry when it's being respected. It can't do it. Why not? Because anger is an emotion designed to change the behavior of somebody else, but being respected feels great. So why would we want to change that? Respect helps you feel valuable. And in our heart of hearts, I really believe human beings just want to feel valued by another human being. And again, there's an evolutionary premium to this. A couple of million years ago, we were never the biggest animal, we weren't the fastest, we weren't the strongest. We were always at risk of being lunch for some other animal. We were prey. And then we began to form these small social groups. And our survival potential increased so dramatically that human beings are pretty much now everywhere on the planet. Everywhere. That group, being part of that group, helped us to survive. And so we carry with us this enormous urgency to be part of that group. But to be part of it, you have to have value. You've got to be able to contribute something. And respect leads to value, which helps you feel safer. You don't want to change that. Your brains, other people's brains. Respect is a very powerful tool in really managing anger, and says you have enormous value. You are amazing. Amazing. So, when you really think about it, we are completely interconnected. All of you, except one person in the audience, who happens to be my wife, are complete strangers. Yeah? Strangers to each other. And yet, here we are, in a room together, interacting, fluidly. You know, a colleague of mine wrote this wonderful book, Paul Seabright, and it was called Company of Strangers. And he starts his book off talking about buying a shirt. And he says, if you think about it, you know, I go into this store and I buy a shirt. But several years ago, a complete stranger had to plant some cotton. Other strangers grew that cotton and harvested it. Other strangers brought a truck built by strangers in a factory. They came to this place, they took the cotton, they brought it to another factory run by strangers, they wove it together, dyed it, put it into a shirt, so I could go into a store and buy it from strangers. I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling to think about it, how interconnected we are, just as a species. So this means we control no one, but we influence everyone. Let's think about that for a moment. You control no one, but you influence everyone. Where you're sitting has an influence. Somebody else comes in to sit, somebody's on the aisle, they may need to move, or a stranger has to go past them. It has an influence. It may not be huge, but it's enough. We influence everyone. Think of what that means, the responsibility, the opportunity, and also the danger of it. Because you could influence people in a way that is not productive. But you can just as easily do it in a very productive way. And this very simple tool that we've developed called respect has enormous, enormous impact. We control no one, but we influence everyone. We have an influence on somebody else's brain. I mean, it's kind of amazing, isn't it? That we do that. You're going to walk out here, and there are going to be all these vendors who are here volunteering their time. They're excited. The energy here is incredible. They're going to have an influence on you. You go after here, you drive someplace, you may let somebody cut in front of you instead of deciding to move faster. You may say thank you more to someone because the influence that's happening here is so healthy and well-being, and it makes you feel valuable. You want to share that with other people, even in these small ways. Imagine if everybody did that, one thank you at a time. one moment of respect at a time. It would change the whole fabric of what we're doing. We influence other people's brains, but we can influence them in a dark way as well. So the next speaker who's coming up, Dr. Brown, is going to talk more about stress. I'm just going to sort of lay a bit of a foundation for that. But stress is really based on a chemical called cortisol. And cortisol is an ancient chemical as well that has traveled with us for millions and millions of years. Very simple chemical. I'm not going to go into it, but really, it's just a bunch of carbons, oxygens, and hydrogens. I mean, it's remarkably simple, but it's sort of like the Paul Revere and the Minutemen of our body. So, up in our brain, this chemical, ACTH, is released. It sends a message down to the adrenal glands that live on top of the kidneys. We're in danger. The adrenal glands begin to make cortisol, which are the Minutemen. They send messages all through the body. I just want to point out, I'm very proud of this, that my daughter, Sophie Shrand, this is the only illustration in the book on stress that I wrote. And I'm so interested because this actually looks like her ex-boyfriend. I'm not sure what to make of that. This guy, he used to mumble a lot. And I'd say, so how you doing, Sam? Are you okay? Things going okay at school? So when Sophie broke up with him, somebody said, what did Sam say when your daughter broke up with him? I said, so, you gotta watch out for this. This cortisol makes your blood pressure go up, makes you breathe faster, your heart rate faster. It releases sugars and fats, all the other chemicals. Your skin gets cold and clammy, your muscles tighten up. This is the stress response. This is the fight, flight, stress response. More the flight branch than the fight branch. So think about it. There you are going about your business in the jungle, and a saber-toothed tiger approaches you. You want to get away from there. What do you want to do? You immediately want your heart rate to increase because you want blood to flow to your strong muscles, the muscles of your arms and legs. You divert blood from your skin. Your skin gets cold and clammy because if you're going to run, you don't want to overheat. You divert blood from your gut, though it doesn't say it here, because there's no point digesting lunch if you're about to be lunch. But the problem in the long run is because you're doing all of this, and in our world of chronic stress, this can explain why we have people with high blood pressure. We've got people who are always feeling tense. We have more type 2 diabetes because you've got to get all this glucose away from the body and into your brain, so you suppress insulin. You have an influence on other people's brains. If you're treating people with disrespect, they're beginning to feel they have less value. And if they have less value, they're at greater risk of being kicked out of the group. And if they're kicked out of the group, they're at greater risk of being lunched for saber-toothed tiger. And so their cortisol levels go up, and they're under chronic stress. It's the way our brain works. That's that ancient limbic part of our brain, hundreds of millions of years old. It's about survival. You get a chance to influence it. So, this limbic system, memories, impulses, feelings, and anger, the frontal lobe, especially the prefrontal cortex, all the thinking, anticipating the consequence, remember, it's right here behind your forehead. This is the thinking part of your brain. This is the part that you can begin to use. And we use all the time to influence other people. And we can either make that cortisol higher, or we can get rid of it. So, reducing the anger of people around you reduces their cortisol. They become healthier, happier people. And not only that, this respect leads to value. Value leads to trust. And trust is based on another chemical in the brain called oxytocin. Not OxyContin, oxytocin. Really interesting chemical. And this basically is the neurohormone of trust. Now, if you remember that cortisol was pretty simple, this is not a simple molecule. This is a very, very complicated molecule, but it is a molecule of pleasure. And how many times have you had somebody say to you, "You're amazing. You did a great job." And you get that rush? That's this. That's this chemical. Cortis is oxytocin. Oxytocin is a very, very, very interesting chemical because this cuddle hormone attaches people to each other. It's what bonds people together. This relatively new chemical, evolutionarily, is probably what has helped us stay together in these groups, where people feel valued by each other, and they want to be altruistic towards each other, and do something for the other people. Because respect leads to value, value leads to trust, and trust is about this wonderful chemical that gives you pleasure called oxytocin. It's this chemical that's involved when a woman is about to give birth. And oxytocin sends a message to the uterus, contract, time to give birth. It's oxytocin that's released when a woman is breastfeeding and her baby and her are bonding together. It's oxytocin that's released when you're falling in love. It's oxytocin that's released when you've come to hear me in my talk. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I feel great. That's what it is. And think about this. You go to a coffee store, you buy coffee from someone, and you say thank you to them. You're increasing their value, their oxytocin. You go to that same coffee store, you get your coffee, and you don't say thank you, you take your coffee and just walk away, you know you've had an effect on that other person. But you've increased their cortisol. You made them feel less valuable. Then they get angry. You control no one. You influence everyone. So, what we now know is that oxytocin is intimately involved in healing. And a lot of the places out here are all about healing and wellness and fitness. So I'm going to just tell you really quickly a study that some of my colleagues did. And it was a very interesting study. So they took couples, married couples, and they gave them some paper pencil tests to see how intimate they were, how close they were, how well they were communicating. And they measured not only the communication, but the oxytocin levels and the cortisol levels. Perhaps no surprise, the couples that were communicating better with each other, just on this paper pencil test, had higher levels of oxytocin and lower levels of cortisol. The couples that were clearly having difficulty in their marriage and arguing a lot and not communicating well had higher levels of cortisol and lower levels of oxytocin. Okay, not a big surprise. Then they took all of these patients, all of these subjects, and they gave them a tiny little burn. Yeah, it was approved, everybody knew what they were getting into with the study. They gave them a little burn, right in their arm, all the exact same size, seeing that tiny, tiny little burn. The couples that had higher levels of oxytocin healed that burn faster than the couples that didn't. That's remarkable. So love heals. This oxytocin is such an important chemical in just who we are every day. Trust is not just something that heals you psychically, but physically. Oxytocin is something that you can help produce in other people's brains, simply by reminding them that they're amazing. Do we have any teachers here? I mean, the reality is we're all teachers. We all have opportunities to influence other people. This is part of what we're trying to talk about in the Outsmarting Anger book. When you're really using that prefrontal cortex and anticipating what is the consequence of what's going to happen next when I treat someone a certain way, you can anticipate whether you're going to increase their stress or increase their sense of value. It seems very simple, and it actually kind of is. Because we have this new brain, this thinking part of our brain that we can use and use all the time, if we're aware of it. How many people here came into this talk because they really wanted to manage their own anger. Thank you for being honest. How many came in because they want to manage somebody else's anger? But think about it. Did you know that you can? Do you know that you have within you the ability to manage somebody else's anger? You can either make that cortisol or oxytocin. We're going to get very quickly into the 7 strategies for diffusing our most dangerous emotion. Body changes, things tense up. Then maybe your face gets flushed, but you know when you're angry. Envision envy. This is part of why we get angry, as we'll go through it quickly. Sense suspicion. The flip side of envy is suspicion. We spoke about that earlier. If I think somebody's got more than me, I'm going to get envious of them. But they may think that I'm trying to take something from them and be suspicious of me. But if you're doing it, everybody's doing it. Everybody's got the same basic brain. This now gets into the 4th step, which is the first step in really being able to manage somebody else's anger. And you project peace. We're going to go into this very briefly as we go through the talk, but have you ever walked down the street and you see a stranger? Complete stranger, and you attribute some attention to that stranger. Can I trust them or not trust them? That takes 37 milliseconds. Scientists have done the study. In 37 thousandths of a second, you have made an assessment about whether that person can be trusted or not trusted. But if you're doing it, everybody's doing it. That person is taking 37 milliseconds to assess you. So this step, the project peace step, is the first step in being able to modulate somebody else's anger. Because if you think about it, it's not really your anger that always gets in the way of success. Very often it's somebody else's anger that gets in the way of your success. And when you can outsmart anger, it's not just about your anger. It's being able to calm somebody else's brain by projecting peace. First step, how you are first seen by somebody else is going to have an influence on their brain. Once you projected peace, you're going to engage empathy. Empathy is our human interest in what other people think or feel. Human beings are very interested. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? But we're particularly interested. What are you thinking or feeling about me? That's what we really want to know. And what we really want to know is, do you see me as valuable? When we can engage empathy, we can really begin to draw somebody towards us because we're letting them know that we're interested in who they are, what their experience is, what's been going on. Why were they angry to begin with? Did you think that I had more than you and you were now at a disadvantage? Did you think that I was going to take something from you and put you at a disadvantage? Why are you angry with me? I'm peaceful and I'm interested in why you are angry. And then you have to use the 6th step. The most important invention that human beings have ever created. And you have to use language and communicate clearly. Let me try an example. If you would all say out loud for me these exact same words together. I am having lasagna for dinner. Wonderful. Now I would like you to say it as a question. Same words. Great. Now as a demand. And now as a seduction. That was great. Give yourself a round of applause. That was terrific. So think about that. Look at that. The exact same words. Different prosody, different cadence, different emphasis, different meaning. It's amazing that we can communicate at all. I mean, when you're with a little baby, the baby doesn't understand the words that you're saying, but they sure understand the way you're saying it. You can say something to a baby and they'll start cooing and giggling and smiling, and you're increasing their oxytocin and yours. So you all did this wonderful experiment, and I want to thank you for it, which is the 7th step. You trade thanks. 90% of our time in our culture, when I say thank you to someone, what are they going to say in return? You're welcome. That's not insignificant. You're welcome means, you know what? I'm not angry with you. I'm not envious that you have more than me and I'm at a disadvantage. I'm not suspicious you're trying to take something from me. You've been peaceful. You're interested in me by engaging empathy. We're communicating with each other. Thank you. You are welcome into my group. You are welcome to what I have. What can I share with you? You're safer because you're now part of my group, and I'm part of yours. You're welcome. So simple. What would happen in our world if every person said one extra thank you? 7 billion extra thank yous in one day. That'd be pretty amazing. That'd be a lot of oxytocin flowing in somebody else's brain. So when you put it all together, these are the 7 steps. Recognize rage, envision envy, sense suspicion, project peace, engage empathy, communicate clearly, and trade things. What does that spell? Respect. And the other side, respect. Because respect is a two-way street. But I'm not suggesting that you gotta give respect to get respect. Just give respect. Remarkable things can happen. So, there's a whole other chunk of the talk, but really, I've covered pretty much everything I want to do. I know we've got other speakers. Why don't I take the last few minutes? We'll end this part here. I just want to point out one other thing. The first thing, because you have this prefrontal cortex and you want to outsmart your limbic system, it leads to a mantra. Keep it frontal, don't go limbic. Okay? Keep it frontal, don't go limbic. Next time you're around someone who's angry, recognize that they're angry and don't go limbic yourself. Stay in that prefrontal cortex. Put your hand on your forehead. Go, okay, they're angry. What do they want to see different? What do they want to see different? Because I control no one, but I influence everyone. The next thing I do is going to activate their prefrontal cortex, and they're going to start anticipating, what am I going to do next? I'm going to either influence their limbic system to shoot up with cortisol, or I can influence their prefrontal cortex and calm them down with some oxytocin. What I do next is going to be important. So keep it frontal, don't go limbic. Quick questions?
Some questions?
The first 3 steps. Recognize that you're angry. So as recognition is a prefrontal cortical function. Right away you're thinking. And remember, anger is an emotion designed to change the behavior of somebody else. So as soon as you get angry, you start thinking, what do I want to see different? There must be something I want to see different. Am I envious that somebody has more power than me? Think about a teenager. Right? A teenager is furious that they got a curfew. They're envious because their parent has said, I have more power than you. I'm setting your curfew. The parent may get suspicious and angry because that kid, they know, is not going to meet their curfew. Now you've got 2 limbic brains. Nothing ever good happens from that. You got to keep shifting over to that prefrontal cortex. So you think, does somebody have more than me and that's why I'm angry? Or am I suspicious you're going to take something from me? So if anger is an emotion designed to change the behavior of somebody else, respect is a behavior designed to change the emotion of somebody else. You can outsmart anger by using this tool of respect. Calming somebody's limbic brain, and everybody's going to do better. Thanks.
Are there other questions? And I'll come over to you with the mic. Are there some other questions? I have a question, Doctor. I tend to not get angry with people in public because they either, say in my mind they're stupid or they have a really bad day. But I get really angry with my family. Is that a different part of the brain? My family can just make me crazy.
Yeah. I don't suppose anybody can relate to that, right? Absolutely. And part of it is because we have these things called groups. Right? And the brain is designed to compare sets of information. And we compare groups. There's an in-group and an out-group. And sometimes in an in-group, you can feel so much safer that you can express some of these feelings. But you've got to remember that even within that in-group, those other people have limbic systems too. You have an opportunity when somebody is making you angry in your family to really do an important tool. Stop, look, and listen. Stop what you're doing. You lead busy lives. Look at the person. That lets them know they're valuable. You're taking your time, your gift of time, and saying you're important. That's empathy. And you communicate by listening. You let them know that you're interested. What's going on with you? Why were you angry? What did you want to see different? From there, you now have two prefrontal cortical brains, and people can really begin to develop relationships. We think about people all the time. We're wondering about them and wondering what are they wondering about us. Like I said before, you have an opportunity to really influence how they're going to see you. So
other questions? We have a question over here. Let me just turn it over.
Don't you think it's necessary to draw a line, though? I mean, when you're trying to engage someone who's enraged and is possibly verbally or emotionally abusive, how do you draw the line and respect yourself as well as the other person?
absolutely. Yes, you do. Because there's going to be a moment where that limbic brain and the other person's brain is too activated for you to really calm them down at that moment. But over time you do. If you need to activate a flight response for a moment and move away, you should do it. Remember, there's a difference between anger and aggression. Aggression is the enactment of anger. And I'm not suggesting that anyone put themselves in a dangerous position. But I assure you that over time, this continued approach of respect, the other brain will calm down. Having worked, in psychiatry units with very, very angry folks, it takes a little while, but their brain is calm, with or without medication. It's what we do. But I agree with you. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you are being abused. And there may be a time where you say, you know what? You can't be in my group anymore. And I'm not going to be in your group. Because this is not good for me. It does not increase my value. I don't trust you. And I got to leave. What you're actually talking about, and I'm so glad you asked this question, is one of the real dark sides and unforeseen consequences of anger. You become alone. How many people really want to be around angry people? So the downside of anger is that person becomes isolated systematically from the group. And the problem with that is that may make them angrier because they become afraid, because they have no value. Respect is a way for us to begin modulating the angry brain and reminding it, you know what? I don't condone what you do, and I don't like it and say it's okay. I'm going to hold you completely accountable for it because what you do affects my brain. But I'm going to respect it. That's not the same thing as liking it. Respect breaks down to read, again, spect, look. Let's look again without judgment at why you're doing what you're doing and try to understand it together by engaging empathy, communicating, projecting peace. And then you thank someone. Thanks for letting me know what's going on with you.
Another question? Another question over here? Let me just get you a microphone.
Good. This is our wellness
This
moment.
helps everybody.
Yes. I act out on my anger the same way my father did. Is this inherited or is this a learned response?
It's a great question, as all of them are. It's probably a little of both. Because what we didn't talk about today is, in the Project Peace chapter, I talk about something called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are these very interesting parts of our brain where we're actually mirroring what another person is doing and anticipating whether we should do it. Mirror neurons were first discovered in the 1990s when scientists took a very thin electrode and put it in the brain of a rhesus monkey And we're watching what parts of the brain activated. And they had this monkey watch another monkey. The other monkey was grabbing a banana. And in the brain that they were observing, the mirror neurons began firing. Ah, grab a banana, grab a banana. None of the muscles moved, but the mirror neurons began doing just that, mirroring and anticipating, should I do this? So your question is wonderful because it shows that we mirror each other. We can mirror each other either through anger or respect and all other ways. You guys go to a movie, you're watching the actors and actresses, they're doing something, you feel sad if they're sad. You feel happy if they're happy, angry if they're angry. You're mirroring their emotions. So yes, it's nature-nurture. There's no separation between these things. Sometimes we're doing things because we have trait anxiety and state anxiety. Trait anger or state anger. But the mirror neurons are what we get to activate when we do the project piece component of the 7 steps.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Are you going to be here?
Yeah, I'll be hanging around, just enjoying this wellness.
All right, that's wonderful that people can.
Great, absolutely.
And your book is available here as
The
well.
book is available, Outsmarting Anger. You can get that, read it. If you like it, you can write on Amazon. If you don't like it, you can still write on Amazon.
Dr. Joe Shrand, thank you very much. Thank you for your great questions. So don't go away because coming up in just a few moments when we transition is Dr. Jeffrey Brown, and this is a great follow-up topic, say goodbye to stress. So I hope you're going to stay with us.